My hands trembled as I sealed the letter to Priya. 20 years of military service, and I'd never felt this knot in my stomach before a mission. The pen felt heavier than my service rifle as I wrote those final words. If something happens to me, remember what Papa used to say about the mountains having eyes. The Delhi cantonment buzzed with pre-dawn activity. My breath formed small clouds in the March air as I watched my 15 soldiers load gear into the transport trucks. These weren't fresh recruits. Every man here had earned his place through blood and training. Major Vikram Sharma approached, his weathered face creased with concern. "Sir, the meteorological reports don't match the seasonal patterns," he said, handing me a folder. "Temperatures 20 degrees below normal for this time of year." I studied the data, but my mind kept drifting to Papa's last letter from 1962, before he vanished in these same mountains during the Indochina conflict, before they declared him missing in action, before I spent my childhood wondering if the shadows in his final photographs were tricks of light or something else entirely. Captain Rohit Kumar, our medic, joined us. "Colonel, the Sherpa guides have been reluctant. 3 different agencies turned down our contract. They won't say why." Lieutenant Anil Gupta's voice crackled over the radio from the equipment bay. "Sir, GPS readings are showing magnetic anomalies in the Makalu region. These weren't in the survey data from last year's expedition." I closed my eyes and inhaled the familiar scent of diesel fuel and canvas. Everything felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on why. The mission was simple: a commemorative climb to honor our fallen heroes. Standard procedure. Yet my father's words echoed in my memory. "The peaks remember everything, Beta. They never forget, and they never forgive." As we boarded the transport, I caught a glimpse of 3 figures in traditional Tibetan clothing watching us from the cantonment gates. Their faces were hidden in shadow, but I felt their eyes on my back like ice water trickling down my spine. When I looked again, they were gone. The engine roared to life, drowning out my doubts. 15 of India's finest soldiers heading into the heart of the Himalayas. What could possibly go wrong? 7 days later, we reached Makalu base camp. The silence hit me first. No bustling expedition teams, no porter chatter, no familiar sounds of organized mountaineering chaos. Just wind whistling through abandoned tent frames like mourning songs. "Sir, look at this," Sepoy Ravi Kumar called out, his voice tight with unease. Half-eaten meals sat frozen on camp tables. Tent stakes driven deep into permafrost suggested hasty departures, the kind that happen when people run for their lives. Personal belongings scattered across the ground told stories of panic. A child's photograph trampled into the snow, prayer beads tangled around tent ropes, boots abandoned mid-step. The smell hit me next, something wild and musky, like wet animal fur mixed with something I couldn't identify, something that made my primal brain scream, "Danger." That first night, I assigned triple watches. At 0200 hours, Sepoy Kumar shook me awake. His face was pale, eyes wide with fear I'd never seen in 5 years of service together. "Colonel, you need to hear this," he whispered. The howling started low, like wind through a canyon, but wind doesn't harmonize with itself. Wind doesn't create melodies that make your teeth ache and your heart race. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, north, south, echoing off peaks that shouldn't have been able to carry sound that way. "What kind of animal makes that noise?" Kumar asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know. 20 years in mountain warfare, and I'd never heard anything like it. Dawn brought no relief. Captain Sharma found the rock carvings while scouting our route, ancient warnings carved deep into granite, figures towering over human hunters, arms raised in threatening gestures, eyes that seemed to follow our movements even in stone. Our local liaison, Tenzin, went white when he saw them. His hands shook as he traced the symbols with his finger. "Misha," he whispered, "the tall ones." My grandfather's grandfather carved these warnings, said they walk between our world and theirs. What else did he say? I pressed. Tenzin looked at me with eyes full of pity. He said they choose who lives and who becomes part of the mountain forever. That night, Havildar Suresh Patel developed his photographs from the day's trek. In every image, shadows lurked in the background, shadows that hadn't been visible to our eyes, shadows with shapes too tall, too angular to be human. We were being watched. At 4,500 meters, the air felt thinner than physics should allow. Each breath burned my lungs like swallowing broken glass. Our thermometers read -40 degrees Celsius, temperatures that should have been impossible for April. The cold bit through every layer of our gear, settling into our bones like ice-cold needles. My compass spun like a child's toy, never settling on true north. The radio hissed with static that almost sounded like voices. Distant, urgent whispers in a language that felt familiar but wrong. When I adjusted the frequency, the voices seemed to respond, growing louder, more insistent. Lance Nayak. Deepak Singh's scream shattered the mountain silence. I found him 20 meters from our water collection point, staring at the ground like he'd seen his own grave. When I followed his gaze, my blood turned to ice water. The footprint was massive, 32 inches long, 15 wide. The depth suggested something weighing over 800 pounds, but the spacing between prints told a different story. 4-foot strides, perfect balance, bipedal movement across terrain that challenged our most experienced climbers. "Sir," Singh's voice cracked, "these are fresh, made within the last few hours." I knelt beside the print, removing my glove to touch the compressed snow, still soft around the edges. Whatever made this had passed through our perimeter while we slept, had studied our camp, our routines, our weaknesses. Major Sharma joined us, his forensics training taking over. Weight distribution suggests bipedal locomotion. Claw marks on these rocks indicate climbing ability far beyond human capacity. He paused, his face growing pale. "Colonel, the pressure patterns, this thing was moving deliberately, intelligently. The implications hit me like an avalanche. We weren't dealing with an animal following instinct. This was something that thought, planned, hunted." As we mapped the surrounding area, the truth became horrifyingly clear. The prints formed a complete circle around our campsite. Whatever made them had spent hours studying us, learning our patterns, identifying our vulnerabilities. We were mice in a cage, and something very large and very intelligent was deciding whether to play with us or devour us. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees as darkness fell. Our breath came in sharp puffs that crystallized instantly, but the real chill came from knowing we were being evaluated like specimens under a microscope. Sleep became impossible. Every shadow moved with purpose. Every sound carried weight. My night vision scope caught thermal signatures that appeared and vanished like ghosts, massive forms gliding between rocks with silence that defied physics. Naik Sunil Yadav discovered the food tampering during his 0400 patrol. Our rations hadn't been stolen. They'd been examined. Fingerprints in the flour sack showed opposable thumbs and manual dexterity that spoke of intelligence. But these weren't human hands. The prints were too large, the fingers too long, ending in what looked like claw marks. More disturbing was what they'd left behind. Coarse black hair that felt unnaturally warm against my palm. Under flashlight, the individual strands seemed to shimmer with their own internal light. "Sir," Sepoy Manoj Tiwari's voice crackled through the radio. "I'm picking up transmissions. Unknown frequency, unknown language." I joined him at the communication post. The recording sent ice through my veins. Coordinated communication between multiple entities. The language felt ancient, primal, but the patterns suggested military-level tactical planning. "How many sources?" I asked. "At least 6, sir. They're surrounding our position." We weren't dealing with a single creature. We were facing an organized group with communication capabilities and strategic thinking. My military training told me to call for extraction. My father's blood told me it was already too late. Captain Kumar's medical report that morning broke what remained of my composure. 7 soldiers, including myself, bore identical scratch marks on our necks. 3 parallel lines, too precise to be accidental. The marks had appeared overnight while we slept. "Sir," Kumar's voice was barely a whisper. "These marks, they're not random. They're marking us, like livestock." The realization hit me like a physical blow. They had the ability to mark us while we slept. They could have killed us at any time, but they chose to demonstrate their superiority instead. We weren't prey, we were entertainment. I gathered my men in a tight defensive circle as the sun disappeared behind the peaks. 15 of India's most elite soldiers, armed with the finest military equipment, reduced to huddling together like frightened children. The howling started again as darkness claimed the mountain. But this time it was different. This time it sounded like laughter. Dawn revealed our new reality. We were trapped. Rock slides had sealed every escape route with surgical precision. Boulders placed exactly where they needed to be to cut off our descent paths. This wasn't natural. This was strategic warfare by something that understood human psychology and mountain terrain better than we did. "Sir, these slides happened simultaneously," Major Sharma reported, his voice hollow. "Coordinated timing across 6 different choke points. Whatever we're dealing with, it has engineering capabilities." I stared at our tactical map, now useless. Every red X marking our blocked routes felt like a nail in a coffin. We were in a natural amphitheater with walls too steep to climb and exits sealed by an intelligence we couldn't comprehend. The stench hit us before we saw the territorial markings. Trees stripped of bark in geometric patterns, stones arranged in complex spirals, and that overwhelming musk that seemed to follow us regardless of wind direction. They were marking territory, establishing dominance, engaging in psychological warfare that would make our instructors proud if it weren't so terrifying. During our reconnaissance patrol, Havildar Patel finally captured clear photographic evidence. The image showed a creature nearly 9 feet tall, covered in thick black fur, with eyes that reflected our camera flash like silver coins. But it was the posture that stopped my heart. Completely upright, human-like, yet possessing proportions that spoke of immense physical power. Most disturbing was the intelligence in its gaze. It knew it was being photographed. It had chosen to allow it. "Sir," Patel's voice shook. "It was watching us the entire patrol, never hiding, never threatening, just observing." When we returned to camp, our world shifted again. Our equipment had been carefully disassembled and examined. Not damaged, but studied with the thoroughness of a forensics team. Personal photographs had been removed from wallets and arranged in patterns that mirrored the ancient rock carvings. They understood human relationships. They were studying our emotional connections, identifying psychological pressure points. "They know who we care about," I whispered to Sharma. "They're building psychological profiles." The implications were staggering. These creatures possessed not just physical superiority, but intellectual capabilities that rivaled our own. They were conducting psychological operations with the skill of trained intelligence officers. Sleep deprivation became our enemy as much as the creatures stalking us. 72 hours without real rest, and the unit's cohesion began fracturing like ice under pressure. "That's not Singh," Lance Naik Kumar pointed at his own squad mate. "Singh died in the rock slide yesterday. That thing is wearing his face." I watched my most disciplined soldiers question reality itself. The creature's psychological campaign was working with devastating efficiency. The shared nightmares started on the 4th night, identical visions plaguing different soldiers. Vast underground caverns filled with preserved human remains, arranged in ritualistic patterns. The dreams felt more like memories than subconscious fears, as if something was broadcasting experiences directly into our minds. "Sir, I can see the bones," Sepoy Tawari whispered during his debrief. "Hundreds of them, arranged like they're telling a story about people who came before us." Captain Kumar's medical analysis confirmed my worst fears. "Colonel, the brainwave patterns during these dreams show external influence. Something is manipulating their sleep cycles, inserting specific imagery." Telepathic intrusion. The creatures weren't just physically superior. They possessed psychic capabilities that turned our own minds against us. The voice mimicry began at sunset. Perfect imitations of our family members calling from beyond the camp perimeter. Sepoy Tiwari nearly walked into the darkness when he heard his 6-year-old daughter pleading for help. "Papa, please! I'm scared! Come find me!" I tackled him 10 meters from camp, his eyes glazed with hypnotic compulsion. Whatever was calling to him had studied our personal files, knew our emotional triggers, understood exactly how to manipulate trained soldiers into making fatal mistakes. Equipment failures cascaded as their presence intensified. Weapons jammed at crucial moments despite perfect maintenance. Ammunition became mysteriously damp inside waterproof containers. Our radio picked up voices of soldiers from previous expeditions, men who had died decades ago in these same mountains. "Can anyone hear me? This is Captain Reginald Morrison, British 4th Mountain Division. The date is... God help me. What's the date? They've taken Thompson and Williams. The tall ones. They collect us. We're still alive down here, but we're not human anymore." The recording was from 1953. Captain Morrison's name was on the memorial wall for those lost during early Everest expeditions. I realized we weren't the first military unit to encounter these creatures. We were just the latest, but as I gave the orders, something howled in response from 6 different directions simultaneously. They had been listening to every word, understanding every plan. They were waiting. The helicopter landing zone was destroyed. Massive boulders placed with surgical precision made aircraft approach impossible. We were completely cut off from the outside world, forced to face our supernatural stalkers on their terms. "Sir, we're on our own." Major Sharma's voice carried the weight of finality. I keyed my radio one last time. "Base, this is Colonel Singh. Mission compromised, requesting immediate extraction at alternate LZ coordinates." Static answered. They had found our communication frequency. As night fell, they emerged from concealment. 3 massive entities approached our defensive perimeter with deliberate intimidation tactics. Each stood over 8 feet tall, moving with coordinated precision that demonstrated military-level tactical awareness. Their approach pattern showed flanking maneuvers and suppression tactics that would impress our instructors. The largest creature stopped 20 meters from our position. In the moonlight, I could see details that made my breath catch. Intelligent eyes that held recognition, scarred hands that showed opposable thumbs and tool use, and most disturbing of all, around its neck hung military dog tags from various nations and decades. My father's dog tags caught the light among them. Suddenly, my mind flooded with images that weren't my own. Memories of my father's final mission in 1962, his team's encounter with these same guardians, his choice to stay and serve as an intermediary between worlds. The creature before me wasn't just wearing Papa's tags as a trophy. It was showing me that he was still alive, still serving, but transformed beyond human recognition. The psychic communication hit me like a physical blow. I understood their language, not through translation, but through inherited memory passed down through bloodlines. They were the guardians of an ancient burial ground our expedition had unknowingly violated. They had been protecting their territory for millennia, eliminating threats while preserving evidence through selective witness survival. Major Sharma stepped forward, his rifle raised but useless. "We're Indian Army. We demand safe passage according to Geneva Convention protocols." The lead creature tilted its head, almost amused. Then it demonstrated their power. The temperature dropped 30 degrees in seconds. Localized blizzards formed and dissipated at will, and the very ground beneath our feet trembled with seismic activity they controlled. The message was clear. Human military authority meant nothing in their domain. The psychic communication intensified, flooding my mind with their ultimatum. I could feel their ancient wisdom, their patient observation of human encroachment, their growing concern about our technological advancement. We represented a threat to secrets they had guarded since before recorded history. "Leave now and never return," the message burned into my consciousness, or join the others who chose to stay forever. We weren't just leaving the mountain. We were leaving behind everything we thought we knew about the world and our place in it. The descent became a nightmare of failing equipment and deteriorating conditions. Weather patterns shifted with malevolent intelligence, as if the mountain itself was testing our commitment to survival. Each day brought new equipment failures at precisely the moments we needed them most. Ropes fraying at cliff faces, radios dying during emergencies, compasses spinning wildly when we needed navigation most. We were still being monitored, still being evaluated, still at the mercy of forces that could reclaim us at any moment. When we finally reached civilization, I faced the impossible task of writing an official report. How do you explain supernatural encounters to superiors who demand rational explanations for missing personnel and equipment losses? How do you justify the unexplainable without destroying your career and credibility? 7 soldiers missing in action due to avalanche conditions, I wrote. Equipment losses due to extreme weather. Recommend area be declared off-limits for future operations. The words tasted like ashes in my mouth, but they were the only truth anyone would accept. During debriefing, each surviving soldier gave identical testimony. Natural disasters, equipment failures, tragic but explainable losses. We had learned to protect the secret that now protected us. But the nightmares continued. Shared dreams of underground caverns, voices calling from mountain peaks, and the constant feeling of being watched. We were marked now, forever connected to something beyond human understanding. 6 months later, a package arrived at my Delhi apartment with no return address. Inside were photographs from our expedition, images none of my team had taken. The photos showed our missing soldiers alive but changed, living alongside the creatures in vast underground complexes carved from living rock. Their eyes reflected the same ancient intelligence as their captors. They looked content. The final photograph stopped my heart. My father, still recognizably human after 45 years, standing beside the creature that wore his dog tags. Below the image, a note in his handwriting. The Singh family has always served as guardians between worlds. Your service is just beginning. Yesterday, I received new orders. Another Himalayan expedition, this time leading a 50-man unit to establish a permanent research base in the Makalu region. My superiors believe I'm the perfect choice. Experienced, reliable, familiar with the terrain. They don't understand that my survival was never mercy. It was recruitment. I'm not going back to the mountains as a soldier. I'm going back as an agent, facilitating controlled contact between 2 worlds that have coexisted in shadow for millennia. Some battles aren't meant to be won. Some territories exist beyond human authority, and some secrets choose their own guardians. The mountains are calling me home.